every student is different.
Every student is an individual.
People are really different.
Trying to understand how the student operate.
What are the student skills and capabilities?
Help me to review papers.
Give them small research problems to tackle.
Project that they really like.
Be always available. Well, I like to be always available. I like to kind of have a friendly relation where, we try different problems, and it depends on the student. I mean, some people like to pick their own problems. Some of them like you to give them a problem. So in the early stages, I just let the student kind of give me the cue. And if they're very interested in a given area, then, I'll try to think of a problem and suggest it to them. Otherwise, I let them suggest things. So basically, my method is to just be available and friendly and approachable to the extent possible, and respond depending on how the student wants to go.
In India, we run a research fellow program where undergraduate and master students come and spend about 1 to 2 years working with us on research problems, and therefore I get to mentor some of these students for a slightly longer duration. Most of these students do not have any background in cryptography, and so we spend the first few months getting them up to speed on the area, reading lecture notes, videos on the topics, plenty of which are available freely online. Next, we give them small research problems to tackle, sometimes even have them work with a senior student or a research fellow. Students can be much more comfortable asking their fellow students for help and questions, and this can lead to faster progress. We do meet every week to understand progress, where they might be stuck, and what tasks they can try and complete within the next week. As we start making progress, it is useful to plan around conference deadlines too, as it helps concretize goals.
So maybe I should mention some of the background, because I'm in a research institute not offering degree. So I don't advise a PhD student for 5 years. Instead, I have some junior student, like undergrad, master, or student graduated and want to pursue a PhD. They will come to my group to do research as a full-time research assistant. So their situation is maybe more like 1 or 2 year master student without a degree. So I typically advise them for 1 to 2 years, and some of them may find that they are not so into theory research, and then they will move on to industry. And some of them are into theory research, but may not be so much in crypto. So I typically encourage them to just pursue PhD abroad in a place where there is a larger theory community. So for advising those students, I usually let them try to find their own research interest at the beginning. But this is usually difficult for the beginning student. They do not know much about our field and do not know much about how to do research. So many of them would try and not sure how to proceed. Then I find a good way to help them to know a little bit more about research is actually to ask them to help me to review papers, mostly conference papers. Since I think reviewing papers help the student to do critical thinking instead of trying to learn the knowledge, the technique from the paper. They will be forced to pay more attention about like the context of the research, what's the really new idea in the paper, and how to judge and evaluate the idea. and maybe to also brainstorm about if what are the questions that the authors do not answer, and potential open questions. I think that's a good exercise, and that's usually better than just asking them to read the paper and present to me. So yeah, sometimes reviewing paper does lead to nature kind of research direction that's suitable for the student, and sometimes they start doing research on related question from a review.
I mean, people are really different. I mean, some people have too much self-confidence, some people have not enough, and what you have to do as a good advisor is very different depending on those things. It also depends a lot on where you are as a student in your career. So I find that what you have to do as an advisor probably in the beginning is to find some, half-baked project where it's pretty clear what you have to do. Read these papers, adapt this technique, put it in. Here's a hole in the paper we're working on. Fill this in with the construction based on that paper there, and so on. And once people get the hang of this and sort of find out that I can do something, I can actually write stuff that makes sense, then after a while, I find that people sort of start spreading their wings and flying a little bit by themselves. So as long as you sort of push gently in the beginning and then sort of feel yourself, start feeling how much can you push, right? Then you can push some more. And at least what I find is that at some point, maybe after 1 year, maybe after 2 years, who knows, people sort of start becoming more self-confident and starting to talk to other people and stuff like this. So I think it's also very important to encourage students, at least once they're ready for it, to work with other people as well. So having good colleagues is also a very important part of being an advisor, because you can send them to talk to other people. And this is a great help in their future career as well, because that's a big part of doing research, to actually contact people, get a network, collaborate. And I think it's the earlier you can start this, the better it is.
So I try to first of all understand what are the student skills and capabilities, and for example, there are many problems in cryptography which are essentially algorithmic problems or complexity problems. They are related to cryptography. Cryptography provides motivation, and often students at the beginning, cryptography is not as common to have a background in cryptography as in other areas. So while algorithm is much more common, everybody in computer science got training in algorithms. So selecting problems that require less reading and experience specific in an area that the student may not be familiar with yet. So that's one way. In order to get into the specific, I work in a quite technical area, lattice cryptography. That's most of my work is in this area. And so it takes quite some time to get into the area. But often you can find a problem that you can understand the problem, understand the motivation, and get a sense of what are the tools available to solve it by reading a small selection of papers, like 1, 2, or 3 papers at most. Already provides you a good, pretty much everything that you need to know. And it's a good way to start learning about a new area. And sometimes problems that are easy to describe, they are deceivingly simple. They are very easy to describe. And but they are not at all easy to solve. It's not clear at all how to solve it. Now, still, those problems can be useful, even if the problem doesn't get solved. In the process of trying to solve it, it can still be a very good motivation for the student to have a clear research goal to motivate learning about the area, trying to do research, in the process learning more about that area. And even if that problem doesn't get solved, what they learned in the process will be useful to work on problems in the same area.
I don't have students, but I have interns. An important aspect is to work with the student on a project that they really like. So my approach is to suggest to the students 2 or 3 different projects based on their knowledge. And then I let them choose the one they like. And I think this has been a successful approach so far, since I do feel that it's very important for the students to really like the topics they're working on.
Yeah, advising students is very important. It's very exciting, and it's very complicated as well. I think there is one statement from Hebrew scriptures that I really like, is that you need to educate a child based on their own ways, kind of not based on your ways. So I think that trying to understand how the student operate and working with them is very important. I tend to emphasize the relation part of things. So the places where advising went the best for me, it was when I created a strong relation with the student. Another thing is to understand that this is a very challenging process. Kind of the process towards PhD is not easy, and you cannot just take out the challenges for the student and do it for them. They will have times where they are not productive. They will have personal issues. So being very patient about that and letting students, because that's one of the lessons students have to learn, that times things don't go great. Times there are other things in their lives that take priority. And even with all of that, they managed to succeed. So this is a very good lesson. It's a little bit like the lessons you teach your kids. You cannot remove all the obstacles for them. It's not so great. So I would say being very attentive to where the student are and what their capabilities, what their strengths, their weaknesses, and trying to assist them, but not trying to do everything for them. That's I guess my formula.
Is that every student is different, right? Just like every person is different. Every student has their own strengths and weaknesses, things they need to improve, things that are just part of their personality, right? So I think really what you want to do when you're advising a student is give them a few problems, start them out with things, but the idea is to learn about them, right? Understand the student, understand what do they want to do? Like, what are they most interested in? What are their strengths? What are the natural places that they can go that would sort of maximize the return on their strength, right? And then, lead them down those roads, be like, all right, I think you'll really love to work in this area. I think you'll really love to work on this problem. And and then just, encourage them to do that, work with them. I think just reasoning through things with students is very, very helpful, right? Because they get to see how you think, how you reason about things, and that improves their ability to reason. I think just these are the basic things, but the most important is understand your student. Think about them, think about what makes them tick, so that you can help them the most with their life as a PhD student.
Well, every student is an individual, and there's different ways to get their attention and their interests. So sometime I had one student that every problem had to be described as a game. Because the guy liked game. I have another student, every problem should look like, every crypto problem should look like malware. Because so you try to talk to people that show their interests this way, through the things that they like, and every problem can be depicted in more than one way. And yeah, and that's all. This is also how you sometimes write a paper. You have something in mind, and the applications is according to some interest, because there may be more than one area of application and things like that. I mean, I'm not talking about the pure theory one, in which you don't need this. You know, if you prove that P is not equal in P, you don't need any practical motivation. It exists anyway. But in most of cryptography is more related to application, and you need to motivate it right. And same way you motivate the paper, you have to motivate students to do the work. But the idea is to give them some problems that you estimate that are solvable, but require research to solve, because at least you scan it, you do a brief review of it, and you know that the state of the art is not solving it, and it's not just saying, it's not at the level of a homework, it's beyond, and you give it to the students, and you don't necessarily need to give them one problem. You can give them 2 or 3 problems, initial problems to think about. Not all of them what you estimate to be very, very hard, but some that you estimate is relatively doable. Or, you know, I typically give students initial problem. One of the initial problems that I give them, I already solved 80%. I mean, I know that it's solvable. I know, at least in the conceptual way. And they think about it. Sometimes they come back with a solution that is based on my conceptual thinking. And sometimes I get surprises. They have a little bit modification of it. But it's good that one of the problems is going to be that, because starting students get a lot of morale boost and encouragement and self-esteem if they start solving problems. So you should not tell them just the hard problem, and let them look at it for months and months and months and get frustrated. Of course, they always get frustrated to do research, but out of frustration, sometimes the solution comes.